I was the asshole a lot of the time too. Like, let's not forget.
It's good to admit that, though.
Oh, yeah. Like, once you've been burned, you'll burn back. Like, once I was burned, I had to burn a lot of people
like
after
other
that.
people?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, everyone. We are back for another very juicy episode of UnCoupling, very consciously uncoupling. And on the program, we have Vita Kari. Welcome. I can't mess this up, guys. Forgive me. Do not come for me in the comments. We're going to get into non-binary and what that means. And we've had a few other non-binary people on the program.
Oh, nice.
We've at least recorded those episodes. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. But I have a lot of other things I want to get to first. You are truly a really fun artist. And I want to pick your brain because you completely give me like Cindy Sherman vibes sometimes.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking
my
about?
gosh. Thank you. That's such a compliment.
My best friend is obsessed with Cindy Sherman. And she just was such a like, I'm going to do my own thing in my own corner and have so much fun doing it. And you're going to want to be invited to this party. And like, Burger is a Body, your Coke thing at the Art Basel Miami. Like, I want to get into all the fun artistry, how you got into it before we dive into the juicy breakups. But I'll read this card so I have it semantically correct. Vita Kari is an amazing artist who creates immersive art pieces involving optical illusions and visual experiences. Vita opened Vita Wood LA, a community art space and gallery to provide a platform for queer artists. And Vita's recent performance series, Virality? Is that a word? Virality.
Virality. Mm-hmm.
Virality.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to learn how to read here too. Virality as form. The Craziest Thing About Being Creative, such a fun series, examines online viewership and breaking the fourth wall through short film videos. Welcome.
Thank you.
How did art find you? Like, were you just barely walking out of the womb? Like, who inspired you to take this path?
Honestly, I feel like it's cliche, but I have a literal journal when I was a kid, and I would list what I wanted to be when I grow up, and it was like kind of always shifting, but it always said something like artist, at one point erotic baker. I think I must have saw it like on the internet or something, but always like some type of art practice was like in there, like some type of creative, and I just was so inspired by artists that I knew. And
did you have a creative upbringing?
I had creative idols, I think, in my family, like in my life, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. But it was just like so, I think growing up, especially like in LA and like just being around so much of that all the time, like it's just impossible not to be like, intoxicated by the glamour of it all.
Optical illusions. I think for me, James Turrell is just an artist that has clearly, like, no pun intended, the vision of coming from, I think his dad was a scientist and his mom was like in the Peace Corps or something like that. So I love looking at his optical illusions and like how he can play with the eye and change colors. Where did you come up with Vita Wood LA? Where do you come up with your optical illusions? Like, Burger is a Body is hilarious. There's a million things you can do with that. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking that. And I really when I think about like the burger piece, right? My grandma's first food in America was the burger, which I think is, first of all, hilarious, but also a really shared like diasporic moment for a lot of people that come from like immigration or like a diasporic community. Mm-hmm. So for that piece, for example, like I'm taking patterns from her clothing, and adorning like beaded work onto the burgers that show those patterns. But she also had like a lot of like bedazzled clothing from like the 80s, and then she like never changed after that. And so much of my life here, she was like such a Fairfax grandma, like forever. That was how I knew her. She
grandma.
Really was. So like she haunted Cantor's and probably still does to this day, RIP. So like I really think that when I think about that burger piece, I really lean into like diasporic kitsch as like an aesthetic. And that's where I pull a lot of inspiration for like my recent work. And I think that goes into virality. Virality is just something that everyone can kind of connect to and project their own, piece of life onto. Even the virality piece, it's not like hyper personal. Like they've printed it out. Like anybody could do it.
Right, right.
We just did one. Like, I don't know if we can share that.
We just did one.
We did. We just did our own virality one.
My hand really looks like your hand.
And it's so easy. Anybody can do it. Anybody can place themselves in that. And I think that's similar to like contemporary art or art that connects to a larger audience and virality. That's the kind of the format, which is like unique enough to be new, but familiar enough to be placed within a larger experience.
Yeah. I mean, I love burgers are a language, and especially Los Angeles, but obviously America as a whole. And so I love that, like, you're either in a Shake Shack mood or you're in In-N-Out mood. Like, those are two different moods. Those are two different burgers. You're never in the mood for, like, I'll take either one. It's like, no, so I love burgers a body. I see it on, like, musical artists, on a carpet. It's just the burger merch. I hope I will sign up for the Vita Burger merch.
Oh my gosh,
100%. I want a burger headband or head.
Oh my gosh, I'll make you one.
Yeah, burger headbands.
No, I mean I think about the burger a lot too, and like I mean on one side, right? It's like there's like the body, the burger, the pressure, right? There's the like American dream, and like what does that even mean? And is it kind of fake? Is it made of foam, right?
It's
and
so
then
fun.
It's just interesting.
It starts a lot of conversations in so many different directions. So that's why that's what I was initially drawn to, is like the Americana of American foods.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of us don't have a culture like where we made it up ourselves, or after diaspora we had to figure it out. So I think the burger leads to a lot of those
LA kids, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Now, have you dated other artists, or do you tend to steer away in that department when it comes to relationships?
I tend to only date artists.
Only date artists.
I have to. I mean, who else would be like okay enough with you staying up till like 2 a.m., or 5 a.m. making your work, and like, you know, you got to date. And I mean, this is just my preference, but I date a lot of artists. Which leads to a lot of breakups and then falling in love again.
Where's the craziest place? Well, we already covered this in social, but we'll cover the podcast. Where's the craziest place you've ever met a potential partner?
Should I say the same?
You can totally say the same.
It was just so iconic, but I walked onto a plane. The plane was in a warehouse, which I feel like must be an interesting experience for the I'm not a person that works in general in like the space of the film industry.
The full make pretend as far as sets go.
I mean, yeah, I'm not like a person that generally is in sets. But I am so enamored by like set design as like an illusion artist. I was like, oh my God, like the experience of walking onto a plane, but it's inside a building. I was like blown away by that. And then I like sat next to someone on the plane who at the time only dated men. I know. Convinced them to get off Grindr. And I was like, maybe you're a lesbian. Totally worked. Shoot your shot. You never know what'll happen.
You never know.
Yeah.
And this is your current partner.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
It is fun when I think in 2024 people are finally expanding what they know to be true. And if it in fact is true, but you experiment with it not being true, that's all okay. The fluidity of just it being not a hard-lined answer seems to be at least where Gen Z is. You look very young. I think you are. You are the Gen Z.
Oh my God, I am older than you think. I'm not Gen Z.
You're not Gen Z.
Maybe
You're millennial.
Maybe millennial, but I'm
What's
a millennial.
millennial?
Millennial is like I think born between like the cuspers. I am 29.
Okay.
I am 29. I will be 30 in November.
So maybe young millennial. Okay, I'm 37, so I'm like hardcore middle millennial.
No, I am. Maybe young millennial, maybe zillennial, but Gen Z. Sometimes I get put in that category, and I get it.
You do?
But I'm a 29-year-old.
Both are compliments, though. I promise. It's the fact. I think
I love Gen Z.
Something about Gen Z is like, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. It's this. Just the non-answer is an answer, if that makes sense.
Well, I think a lot of like the queer community, right? And I think like I recognize I'm on the forefront of defining what a queer relationship can look like as like a non-binary person, as a person with like a trans femme partner, like especially to the Gen Z community, which is like the predominant non-binary community. Like there's the group of us that are like a little bit older, and we kind of are the leaders in a lot of the ways, like because we're moving into like eventually defining what having kids might look like within that structure. Or, I mean, there's been so many members of the trans community that have come before us and so many like members of the queer community that have done the work, I mean, for sure. But in terms of like maybe defining what it looks like on social media, I think there's like a group of us from like maybe 27 to like 37 that are kind of redefining what that looks like right now. So maybe that's kind of, I think, an interesting space to be in.
Do you have a story where you feel like you've had a healthy breakup and you were proud of yourself, and then you have other stories where you had a really unhealthy breakup and you have to sort of think, okay, how accountable I am for the bad of that breakup and the good of that breakup? Like, what is the spectrum?
Oh my gosh, well, I'm a messy... Wait, can I curse on this?
Yeah.
I'm a messy bitch. I'm a messy bitch. I am. I'm a messy bitch. What can I say? Like, there have been times where I was, like, really mature because I was less invested. It's easier to be mature when you're less invested, maybe, in my opinion, for me. But then also, like, there's times when I was just totally awful. But I'm actually friends with a lot of my exes.
You are?
I'm totally friends with a lot of my exes. Most of them.
And would you say, what's the healthiest breakup that you had with one of those exes?
One of my exes, we were just not compatible. But I really wanted it to work on paper. They were like a lawyer. Like, come on, doesn't it get more like...
That's like one non-artist.
They were the one non-artist. And it was like, oh my God, my dad was stoked. Like, I really wanted it to work with them. But ultimately, like, our hearts spoke different languages. Our bedtimes were different.
The bedtimes are a big deal.
When could we find time to hang out? We dated for 3 years.
Wow.
On and off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was a pull there of some kind.
We started young, 21.
Okay.
3
years.
And then, yeah, but it ended. And I think it ended really mutually and boring in a way. Like, it ended with I think which this would work better as friends. And we still stay in contact.
Boring can be really beautiful.
It is. And it's like, I like to catch up. And I mean, they're still friends with my dad on LinkedIn, which is weird. And, like, whatever. It's great. Shout out. Shout out to them.
I like that.
But I think I'm more interested in the breakups. Like, there was one person I broke up with that I, like, just made a ton of art projects about, a whole zine about the breakup, and, like, put it all over the internet in 2018. And we're still friends.
Still friends? Do they admit and sort of hold themselves accountable for the art that you did make? Where they're like, yeah, fair, okay.
We're both, I think that's an interesting place where it's like neither person was, most times in relationships it seems that, well, actually, in my experience, neither party was more awful than others. But in my friend's recent breakup, he was an asshole.
And he cops to it?
No. But in my friend's recent breakup, there was one party that was way worse. And so, like, yes, he totally sucked. But in my in my personal breakups, it seemed like there wasn't, like, a party that was truly awful, even though it felt like that in the time. It was mutual. I mean, it was sadly more, boring is beautiful. It was more boring than I had hoped. And it was just incompatibility, and it ended with tears, and you have to really just sit with the pain and
embrace it.
Embrace it and build from it.
It's at the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
And was your friend's breakup one that is humorous, or is it one that's like gut-wrenching? Like, what kind of breakup was your friend's? This is a recent breakup.
This is a recent breakup. It's
we
interesting.
We have permission to tell the story.
We have permission to talk.
Yes.
It was brutal. It was so painful. It's
to
just
your friend.
To my friend. And it's interesting because I've been in relationships, like, I date everyone. And I've been in relationships myself.
Pansexual? Consider pansexual?
It's interesting because it's like, I used to say pansexual or bisexual, and I don't really know how to define it anymore.
Just like humans.
I almost, like, don't even define it because it's like, I don't even know. I mean, yeah, technically, yeah. But I guess I just date. Yeah, I've dated a lot of people, and it's interesting. I guess yes, to say it. I don't even know why I'm trying to define it. Yes.
Yeah.
But I've dated a lot of people, but in the times where I was, like, most hurt were those that hadn't, like, unlearned misogyny, when it was men that hadn't unlearned misogyny. Okay. So had placed me in positions of, like, servitude, or, maybe, like, misunderstanding the full spectrum of personhood, which is honestly, we all have to do the work to undo that. And I think that I saw my friend in a similar position.
So that's where it really is gut-wrenching for you to see your friend get caught in those tropes that are so common, and then she's feeling it.
Yeah, when it's like the cycle that we've seen maybe like our parents and
the modeling.
For sure.
Yeah.
A lot of us probably come from like households of like divorce, and that's I think where we see that.
We've had recent conversations on the podcast about how the LGBTQI community, there's just more space for acceptance because people have had to ask really hard questions earlier in life where they had to face a lot of isolation earlier in life. And usually when there is that adversity, you tend to have a softer bounce back and more empathy, and there's just less no's, and there's more there's more of an authentic presence in conversations and just life in general, lifestyle in general. Like you get up and you know what you want, and you're not afraid to ask any question that sort of pops up in your head. Do you find that that's the case, and you wish your friend had more of a space of exposure to more kindness and more of a spacious acceptance, where she could maybe see the breakup as for what it is?
I think she sees it. She's also queer.
Okay.
So I think that she knows it doesn't have to be like that.
Okay.
I think that this is I'll say this much, which goes on to like, I wanted to share this on this podcast, which was one of my most painful moments of queer dating history, which I think is a shared experience. So I think this is something common that happens. Queer woman dates straight guy.
Okay.
We see this a lot, right?
Okay.
Queer woman dates straight guy.
Though.
Oh, okay.
Tell us.
Queer woman dates straight guy. Bi girl dates straight guy.
Okay.
Gets heartbroken by like the misogyny, but tries to like live up for it. Like, and like, it just really ends badly.
Just because they fell in love with that person. So
just because they fell in love with that person. It happens, Been there. She's been there, like, and, that happens. But what I think also is interesting of the bisexual experience, which I've definitely been victim to, no, I shouldn't say victim to, but this is such an experience that I've had so many times, especially early on in my young life, which I wanted to share on this because I feel like it's like the less glamorous part of this all, is like early on when I was especially younger, like high school and early college, I would date bi girls, and I would like, I'm a simp. You know what I mean? I would show up with flowers. I'd be like, I'm so excited. Like, what can I do? I'd take people, like, I'd draw them pictures. I was very, like, heavily romantic, giving a lot of love in the early days. And we'd, like, date. And then they'd be like, I'm so sorry. I, like, don't think I actually like girls. It's like you can't even compete. Like, there's nothing you can do. You can't change. You can't be better. It's just like, so anyways, for all the listeners out there, if you've gone through something like that, I see you. Because it really is just kind of like you can't, like, there's almost nothing you can do. No amount of, like, therapy can fix that part of it.
And I see both sides of the coin. I see one side where, like you said, it's something so deeply personal. If you are a lesbian or a bi girl who likes another woman.
Or it's like it's actually not personal because it's kind of like, oh, like she actually just doesn't like, it's like not even about me. It's like,
not about,
no, it's not personal at all. It's like,
but it's something that you so fully identify with. You're like, no, I'm this. I know I'm this. I can feel that I'm this in my core. And then they're like trying it on for size, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I could see both sides of the coin of like, well, they have the right to try it on for size.
That's how we find out, right? That's how we all find out.
On the flip side of that, it's like, but you're playing with, when you're trying that on for size, this is another person that is in this. And so it's a double-edged sword, and you can be victim if you're the one that's like, oh, I'm in it, I'm great, I'm good. And then to find out that, like, I got one of those. and I did all the right things, like you said, but there's literally nothing I could do.
I mean, victim is like a crazy word because, of course, it's like it's like an intense word. But yeah, I think one of my earliest experiences of like heartbreak was just like, I was like falling for this girl, brought her flowers in the rain.
Right.
Thought we were going somewhere. She was straight.
That's
but it happens.
Tough one, though.
It happens.
I think it's good to talk about.
I was like 20.
Yeah, well, and it's especially if you're that young and you're like, I know who I am. It's good for someone. What if that had been was that your first relationship?
No.
Okay. So if it had been, that's even it's like, oh, how you can't win. You know what I mean? So it's good for people to hear that if that will happen to be their first. And you're like, oh, this is like, that poor kid can't catch a break. Like this,
right.
You will make your way, but it's just tough right now.
No, I didn't date people for like a year after that.
I
was like,
I'll
never try again.
Yeah, that's tough,
that's
man.
hard. So talk about breakups. That was a sad one. But I think in the same way, though, like, I mean, you know, I had the privilege of being able to be gay younger or whatever. So there's also that, right? Like a lot of people don't get the chance to try until they're older, which I respect. But I will say, in the case of my friend, right, who again, like now as a queer person is reckoning with the straight guy, it's interesting. But it's hard, right? Because it's like hard. I've gone through so much pain and breakups before, and to see a friend or a sibling go through it, it's like, you can't do anything. It's like you just gotta go through the pain solo. That's the weird part about it.
Having the same conversation over and over with her would probably be really helpful for her. It's like the best way you can be a friend is like, we're going to have that same back and forth again. No problem. We'll do that.
Well, she was like, what do I do if I want to text him? And I was like, let's write down a list of all the reasons of things. Like, let's write a binder of the awful stuff he did so we have a thing to reflect on, like a reference of why to not text him. And I will pull this out. And so I do. Like, if there's a moment where, like, she's about to fold, I pull out the binder. I pull it out, and I'm like, reason number 46, like, X, Y, and Z. This is why we're not texting him today. Sometimes you need somebody to hold, you know, like, you just need somebody to remind you why not to text someone.
Well, and it's the fact that I'm assuming there was disrespect.
Yes.
In the situation, and so having the list of, like, ways to respect myself on a daily basis.
Exactly. Like
8 noon and 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. You know, it's like that would probably not include him because of how he treated her, I would assume.
And that's like another thing. Every breakup you go through, and then like after you get out of the tunnel, right, you realize how much time you have to do shit.
24 hours a day gets to be you.
Facts, yeah.
That's a blessing. I always say that, yeah. And so what would you say your craziest breakup was?
Dang, craziest?
People that are listening to this podcast either are listening for a friend, it's obviously they themselves, or, you know, they like, you know, I had such bad behavior, they had such bad behavior, how am I going to get back into to be able to respect myself or even just move on from that previous relationship, even if they're not ready to date. So I think the crazy breakups always, it's like misery likes company.
No, totally. Oh, man. It's hard to choose. I've had so many bad ones. Okay.
Have you?
Yeah, totally. And not only that, I was the asshole a lot of the time, too. Like, let's not forget.
It's good to admit that, though.
Oh, yeah. Like, once you've been burned, you'll burn back. Like, once I was burned, I had to burn a lot of people
like
after
other
that.
people?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. When I was, like, okay, so after my moment of, like, you know, chasing like a sweet girl who just was misguided, which is totally fine. I totally understand that. I like kind of like stayed away from women, so I started dating guys. And then I tried the guy thing, which was cool. But then like then I dated the kind but incompatible lawyer guy. That was early college. And then I dated someone. Oh yeah, bad breakup. Dated a musician. A guy that did music. And when you date a musician and you're an artist, what's going to happen? You're going to do like the equivalent of like diss tracks towards each other if you break up, right? And of course, this is like SoundCloud era. This is before the days of, and like I'm talking like we're not like, you know, this is an artist with like following that's significant. This is like baby time artists just posting diss tracks on SoundCloud and like, you know, basically the post-Tumblr era. That's
a fun subgenre to go into.
This is a fun
Yeah.
It's also so much drama for what? Like for no one to except for yourself to vent into the void. It's good. And it's small. It's micro drama. And that is exactly what I did. So like broke and like already made like a lot of art. Okay, back to the person I made a lot of art about. This is who this person. Broke up with someone, a guy. Broke up with this guy. He hurt me because he was too addicted to video games. I'm so serious.
That's a real thing,
Video
guys.
game addiction.
Oh, that's a real thing.
Video game addiction. Had internet girlfriends. I was crushed. Internet girl
Like
friends.
that played the games with him on the headset, or separate internet girlfriend?
On Second Life.
What's Second Life?
Second Life is like a virtual universe in which like you can have, and I'm not shaming Second Life players. It's just don't be like in, you know,
This
in
is like the metaverse,
fidelity.
but like
this was like
OG
before the metaverse. Yes. This is back in the day. Like,
this is the.
we're talking
Mark Zuckerberg
2018.
might have stolen Second Life and put it in the
1,000%.
metaverse.
There's a great documentary that I had to watch.
What?
Actually, his mom and I watched it together.
What's the documentary called?
Second Life. Like
Okay,
the documentary, like
so
I
it's
don't know.
about
Yeah, it's
okay.
crazy. So you go. It's like there's no real point to the game. It's like a open world
Sims,
type of thing. Yeah,
essentially.
it's like The Sims, exactly.
Okay.
I wasn't really familiar with it until this relationship, but he had like hella girlfriends on this video game. I swear to God, like, and they were real
It's
people.
like a Tamagotchi. Do you sign in and just like?
But they were like real people, like signed. I don't know why I'm
yes.
like they were like real people, like real people.
Burning Man did a
Yes.
virtual like this, where
Yep.
on their off year, where you could sign in and yes, it's a real person. Oh, interesting.
And like no
Interesting.
shame at all. Like I love my internet friends. I have so many internet friends. I've made so many
Oh, yeah,
internet friends.
Instagram's a huge
yeah,
place for that.
Instagram is that for Instagram is Second Life. You just don't walk around with your
Right.
multiplayer character, right?
Right.
But don't have Instagram girlfriends while you're dating. So you know what I mean? Anyways,
You should have gone into Second Life and told those other internet girlfriends.
right? Something I would be like, hey, no, I just didn't have the. I wasn't even motivated. So, anyways, long story short, had internet girlfriends and I had to dip. I had to leave. So I had to leave. It was so messy. I made tons of art, dragged this person all over the internet.
What materials are we talking here?
Zines.
What are zines?
Zines are like self-published magazines, and I made digital versions. So I made like something called Letters to Your Lovers, where I not only dragged him, but every person I had ever dated up until that
These
point.
are like Substacks.
Kind of.
I'm
except,
realizing there's all these current versions of things
Yes.
that used to be.
Yeah, it's always derivative. It's always
Interesting.
generative. So I made. Have you ever seen like the VH1 dating shows? Like
yeah.
I Love New York.
Yeah.
So I made in the style of
what's
that.
the one? Tequila.
Yes.
What's her? Oh God, that was a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So I made it in the format of that. Like I made it look like the fonts and stuff from
Oh
that, and I
my
made like an edit of
gosh.
me like looking like from that era.
You need to bring these back.
It was honestly epic.
You need to bring these zines back.
It was great. So in the zine, I not only dragged this person, but I dragged every single person, which was not just him, but this girl that I had also dated that we had ended badly. Like
This is the
prior.
burn book.
It was the burn book. And I had just dragged, not by name, but I dragged every single person. And then just to make it even worse, I put albums that we had like favorite albums we had shared. And then I added those albums in. So it was like Dear, and then I gave them all a nickname. So I was like, Dear, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's all the things that, like, and I wrote it like so, like, young adult novel, like, pseudo-romantic. Like, we met in the summer of blah, blah, blah.
The angst was strong.
We listened to Blonde, Frank Ocean on the way through the mountains. Yeah, cringe.
That's so fun, though.
Burned everyone. And then his section was, like, super long, put it on the internet, Instagram, everything. Yep, uploaded it onto, like, my SoundCloud cover with a bad mixtape. Yeah.
That's
Dragged.
great.
R.I.P.
That's
And then
a
he made
really
an
fun
album
one.
about it.
Y'all should do a collab
We're friends.
at the gallery and have the X. It's like his music over the zines, and it would be so. It's like the weirdest X version of Inception.
But he's great though. He's great. He has a great girlfriend and he's thriving. And I'm still friends with his mom.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually my partner is friends with him.
And your partner's friends with him. Mm-hmm. Did they meet as a result of you?
Uh-huh.
Funny.
Because like a year out, or
got
maybe even
over
6 months out, yeah, I got over it and I was like, maybe we were just meant to be friends. Because we also lived together and I realized we had more of a roommate relationship.
Right.
And I think that's the thing being a queer person, right? Sometimes it's like, are we in love or should we just be best friends? Do I want to be you or do I want to be with you?
Actually, I do know about this, that I have several lesbian friends that said we broke up when they were my best friend. I was like, really?
That's what happened. We broke up when he was my best friend.
Huh.
Exactly.
It's, yeah.
And it's
So
true.
I guess there is a
It's
fine
true.
line.
I think I identify more now as a lesbian, to be honest with you. I'm non-binary, but also a lesbian. It's complicated. I'm figuring it out myself. But that's more how I identify. And when I think back to that relationship, especially, he was such a hetero guy.
Can you be a non-binary lesbian? Like
Yeah,
a they, them?
I think you can.
Who dates women? Yeah.
I think you can be a non-binary person that dates
I
another
see.
non-binary
Yep,
person.
That's where the catch is.
Like my
I see.
partner's trans femme. Mm-hmm. And I think we identify most closely to lesbians. Like our relationship dynamic functions most closely to lesbians.
So fascinating.
It is always evolving. We're always evolving. But I think that if I look at the relationship with this guy, the reason it didn't function was because of the way that essentially he was dating a lesbian. And I just wasn't really, it's like, did I want to date him or did I want to be him? And I think most realistically,
That's interesting.
I think I just was attracted to the sense of like masculinity, the privilege maybe of masculinity, and I had to really like unlearn my own internalized misogyny to recognize I just wanted to be his friend. It's interesting. It is really interesting. And then when I was in that relationship, I was like, oh, I like was inherently like, I can't be the one that like, for example, do what I love, caretaking, cooking. I love to cook. I do like doing like cleaning, like these inherent, again, like these.
They're technically very like gender
domestic.
assigned.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. But I
yeah.
didn't want to do them because I didn't want to be, right. I didn't want to be positioned in that. And then now I'm like, why would I even ever want to, like, those are just like normal people
They're
things
just
to
caring
do.
things that you want to do. Yeah.
But when I was in that position, so anyways, to go into the journey of self-love afterwards and to rebuild yourself after, I had to really like, it was an awful breakup. I cried all the time. I like had to watch movies and like literally like throw chocolate at the computer screen as instructed by my sister. Sometimes that's the only way to heal.
I've mostly been broken up with, but oh man, I've done a couple breakups and I never knew that was actually the harder position, in my opinion.
To be the breaker-upper?
To be the breaker-upper.
Oh my God, I respect that so much.
It's really hard. It's the worst. It's actually the worst.
I feel so opposite.
That to getting broken up with's worse?
Yeah. But that's probably because I'm like fragile ego baby and I should probably like unpack whatever that is. But
it could also be control too, because if, like for me, I don't like to know that I actually changed the course of my life.
Oh.
I'm like, no, couldn't help it. They didn't want it, so then I had to go that way. Like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because so if you choose the breaking up, it's like you can play true sliding doors. It's a great movie if you haven't seen it with Paltrow. Sliding Doors, where it's if she had gone through the door a minute later, what would have happened to her life? And it goes on two different paths of the movie. But it's like I play sliding doors in my head of if we had stayed together, where would we live? What would we do? Who would your friends be? And so if you're the breaker-upper, you've just gone like, and gone this way. And so if you're the person that you're breaking up with, it's like, oh, no, it's not my fault. Like, I just had to go with the flow.
I wonder for me, it's like my chronic, like, middle child.
You're a middle child, okay.
Total middle child syndrome. So it's like my ego is, like, so tied up in, like, will this person, like, I define my worth by this person's love. And if, like, cast it aside, my soul will be never redeemable or something, which I've worked on, of course. But still there's a feeling of that. So, like, if broken up with, it's over. So at least even if the breakup is pending, I would rather be the one to like cut it off because that way, like I am
you're the decision maker. You're
somehow.
Safe. Yeah, you're safer. With those to be the one to divert is a safer option for you.
Yeah, like I won. Or I'll even encourage friends like if the breakup's coming. Bro,
do
get
it first,
out.
do it first.
That way you won. And it's like, what is that mentality? I'm like, what is this? I'm like. What is that? Yeah. So you quote win, like win the breakup? Excuse me, what? Like,
oh my gosh,
what is that?
Yeah. I think the breaker upper. I think the chronic. It's the chronic. I've made a mistake syndrome. Like, oh God, did I make the wrong choice? Oh God, and it's like I'm a Libra, and so it's like indecisiveness to the core of like I don't know, just choose something for me because then I know that I had no. It's like you want no blame. It's like such a like avoided, it's not my fault. It's not my fault I ended up over here. And so it's so interesting what people view as safe with breakups. And what's the worst, I guess the worst way you've been broken up with might be the girl in college. Like, because you just got crushed? Or is there another breakup that if you were the one that got broken up with?
Honestly, any type of infidelity is brutal. And honestly, some of the worst breakups were never even relationships to begin with. Like, situationships.
That's a thing.
Which is an out of 2024, by the way. Speaking of,
thank God.
You know,
do you think are the kids
going
to listen?
The kids should listen. Yes,
to these
for sure. Listen
situationships.
to that. Situationships are out. It's done. it is some of the most painful stuff I've ever gone through. Which is sad to say, but some of the most painful moments have been when I'm like waiting for a text back. I don't know if this person's dating someone else. Should I be dating other people out of spite? Like, those are some of the most painful moments in history. Like,
well, it's just you're not being acknowledged as a person.
Yeah.
It's like the lowest form of acknowledgement or the lack thereof. And so it's like disqualifying you as a human with a soul to me. Is like, I'd rather someone date me and then give me the worst, clearest breakup of all time because at least you identified me as a human. Situationships is like you just get cast over to me.
I mean, I think it's like good that it's normalized to be talking about it because
That's
it's
true.
like, thank
That's
God
true.
now we can like at least have a name to be like, I don't
No.
like it. No situationships allowed, like, for those going through it. Because I wish, like, I had been able to, like, I'm lucky that my time of dating came when situationships were already kind of, like, being articulated.
Okay.
Like, no,
Right.
no, this is not okay. Like, but it's interesting because even, I mean, all right, don't cancel me, but I'm going to say it. The ethical non-monogamy moments.
Okay, how do you feel about E&M? Yes.
I feel great when done ethically and, like, really considered well. But seeing my little sister date, I think that it's a term that gets kind of, like, thrown around loosely. Like, I have so many poly friends. Look, in the queer community, like, I am constantly around functional and
Right.
amazing polyamorous and ethically non-monogamous relationships. Like, that's a huge part of the community. But I see this word get thrown around on Tinder all the effing time. And my little
Do you
sister...
use excuse? Like people say, oh, I'm E&M, I'm E&M.
Well, I just see... before my sister met her partner, like, she was constantly getting thrown into these non-ethical, ethical, non-monogamous situations where it was just, like, done wrong. People were plagued with, like, just not have done the work and just, like, jealousy and missed connections. And it was honestly just, like, situationships gone, like, 1,000 times more painful. Like, I was shocked at it. And I realized so many of the situationships I had been in were, like, called like, I was, like, brought into a, like, like, not even brought in, but, like, people were like, oh, I'm polyamorous, but they didn't know what that meant.
Okay.
And this was back in, like, the 2018s,
Okay.
the late 2010s.
Okay.
The mid 2010s. Back in the 10s. Yeah. And, like
15, 16, 17, 18. Okay.
yeah, and back then, polyamorous was, like, the thing, right? It was the stand-in for the ethical non-monogamy.
Right,
In the
right.
way it plagues the young Tinderers of today, that was the word for back in the day. And back then, it was kind of a similar thing. Like, it was done really well by a large amount of people, but done really poorly by some on Tinder. And I was definitely affected by that in the way that it was become a situationship. And definitely...
Which is not E&M.
No,
Right.
not at all. It's just
Right.
non-ethical, non-monogamy.
Non-ethical, non-monogamy.
Non-ethical, like, appropriation.
Situationships is right.
Situationships and appropriation of
Exploiting it.
Exploiting a community that's done a lot of work.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, it's really hard to do right, and I would argue there's a smaller portion doing it correctly, and then it could get a bad rap when people sling it around on the outskirts.
For
But
sure.
I think it's at its core. I would be curious to know the numbers because there are more articles coming out from bigger and bigger outlets talking about E&M. And, like, the Burning Man community, it's kind of like a running joke, you know, that everybody's
Oh my God, I'm not
there.
in on this tea. What is this? I need to be in on the Burning Man
The
tea. What is
Burning Man
that?
tea is like OG E&M people back in, like, the 80s and 90s and aughts. And there's a guy, I should know his name. He writes a really funny newsletter about Burning Man and sort of the tropes that Burning Man can sort of bring in. And it's a joke ultimately, but, you know, talking about thirds and you know, this married couples getting their two Mannies to go to Burning Man, and they're going to argue over their third chat of who's going to go snowboarding with that year, who's going to watch the, you know, it's a joke, but it's interesting to see who slings it around casually versus who can do it at its face value, E&M.
Well, in the poly community, I have I have seen it before my eyes done so well. Like I have friends, some of my best friends are in polyamorous relationships.
So full-blown relationships.
And they kill it. They're killing it. They're just doing it so right. But back in the mid 2010s, I was just, constantly
How were you affected
the
most heavily? I
think it was
story of.
I think it was the non-committal person looking for a situationship without accountability.
The one thing I do think the E&M thing needs to be addressed is on dating apps. Have you ever been on a dating app?
Back in the mid 2010s.
That was then. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think E&M should be one of the first things you talk about on a first date. And some people will disagree with me, but I do think it is because...
Is it not? I mean, it is, hopefully, right?
No, I've gone on dates where it was not... It was maybe mentioned a month in.
Oh my God, cancel them. Drop names. No, I'm kidding.
It's bad.
Oh my gosh.
It's bad.
What?
And it's just misleading. Where you're like, no, that's a big part of your life, dude.
Oh my God.
If that should be on a profile, if it's a dating app situation.
Yeah, I have a relationship that I'm in, and... People don't disclose
and they might not even be in
that?
any relationships yet. But if that's their intention and they're very sure of that, lifestyle, they need to disclose that immediately.
1,000%.
To anybody they're dating. And I would say second date at the latest, but it should be something even privy before the first date, in my opinion.
How would you feel if it what if you say you're in a relationship with someone and then it changes over time? How would you feel about that?
I think everyone has, it's always a teach their own, and I always say you have to live your own life, you have to live your own life. So I would say you absolutely, it could be a treacherous road to cross, but if that's something that's inherently going to be there, that's arisen over time, and it's not like you pulled the wool over someone's eyes, you're like, oh, this has come up, and this is a thing, and I've marinated over it, for a while, and it's it keeps coming up. You're going to do what you're going to do. And so I think it's only fair to just let that person go. And it's it comes down to a little bit of luck, I think, in relationships where you've been dating for several years. It's going to be really hard for that other person. But what are you supposed to do? Just live a lie, and then that's also not being truthful in a relationship with that person either. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So I think it's best to release that person and at least let them have a chance at a fully authentic relationship that you're not having to hide anything. So it's hard, but I think the best thing to do is let that person go.
No, I think about that a lot. No.
But,
I think about that. When I was in, the person I dated before my current partner was interested in polyamory, and I was like, oh, that won't. I'm so sorry. I think that's so cool for others. For me, I'm a hardcore monogamous. I don't know what it is.
I couldn't do it. The polyamory, I could not do.
Well, I see my friends, doing it ethically and killing it, and it's so correct for them, and they just I'm really inspired by that.
Must have
it just
no
doesn't
fear.
work for that.
On this podcast, actually, intimate was described by a sexologist that intimacy means something that you cannot replace. And so you can't switch that other person out for something. So there's something about that person, and it's not necessarily physical. It could be emotional. It could be spiritual. It could be physical, but you can't switch them out for someone else. And that's what true intimacy is.
I think with polyamory, maybe it's that intimacy can't be replaced, but
they can't be switched out.
They have a person that fills a different space of intimacy, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, I know. So let me actually rephrase. I couldn't do polyamory in the way I've seen it be done, but I should reframe. I have considered myself polyamorous actually in the past because of my partner, but also my best friend. We have considered ourselves polyamorous in the sense that my best friend and I have an incredibly close, almost romantic relationship.
Yeah.
But it's we come as a pair. So when I started dating my partner, it was really important that they knew that my best friend and I were kind of coming together, and it's we would be in a way my partner is my best friend is a platonic polyamorous person in my life.
I call it the Gail and Oprah. It's the worst term for it because of the jokes.
I don't actually know. Are they besties? What's the situation?
They come as a pair. They're just besties, but platonic besties, where it's yeah, I want to live my life with my best friend, and I have a Gail and Oprah in my life, and I adore her husband. Where
and have you ever felt jealous of her husband?
No, I feel like more love the fact that they're together.
That's sweet. You're so much more mature than I am. I feel literally, but there's been times with my best friend.
But I know what you mean.
I've been like with my best friend and I'm like, am I in love with her? Before I had my partner, I was like, am I in love with her? Like, she's queer, I'm queer. But then I'm like, no, maybe not. Maybe we're just best friends, platonically. But I think there is something there that's inherently.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
there's a kinship of just a very strong
Does
connection.
it count as polyamorous? There's been times where like in the poly community, like one of my really good friends is poly and they consider our situation a polyamorous situation. But it's interesting because it's like there's obviously not the sexuality there. But other than that, it's everything else.
Everything else, yes.
Everything else.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I consider myself really lucky because I've met people that don't have like a deeply connected best friend. And I was like, wait, you don't? I thought everybody did.
Oh my God.
And not everybody does.
It's so sad. You know what? I'll be honest. Speaking of breakups, I know this is a romantic breakup thing, but.
Oh, the friendship breakups are tough, man.
Sometimes, I mean, honestly, like I've been more devastated. Romantic breakups are brutal. I have cried more hours in my life probably over friend breakups.
The betrayal's, I think, worse.
Yeah, it's brutal.
The betrayal's really bad. I had a long-standing rumor from one of my very good friends, and it's only happened really just like maybe twice in my whole life.
Yeah.
But as an adult, only once. And it was wild. Yeah, it's wild to get the apology letter like 2 years later, and you're like, okay.
Wow.
And it's nice as an adult, you can go, that's not for me. They sent the apology for whatever reason that they needed to send that apology. But that doesn't mean all is forgiven. And I can very healthily move on and not hold grudges and not have like a negative energy towards that person. But no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need anybody in my life that would ever mistreat me like that. And the betrayal is deep. You're like, what? Like your mind's blown because you think you know someone when you almost don't trust yourself. As a result, with the best friends.
No, best friend breakups, I think, are like so traumatizing, truly traumatizing.
So traumatizing.
And I think, honestly, let me reframe. Worst breakups
are the best friend breakups.
To me,
have
been best friend breakups, which have only happened, I think, twice in my life.
Yeah.
Also, two.
One at 15,
It was so painful. I mean, I still haven't recovered. One was I broke up with someone, which was so difficult.
It's tough to be the breaker-upper in that situation.
So it was, you know what? It was so tough and almost harder. You're right. And then the other one was I got broken up with, and I should have been because I wasn't treating them right, and I will always regret that. And it's brutal. Yeah. Nothing is more painful. Well, actually, that's not true. I mean, infidelity is really painful, but on par.
It's on par. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. No, my best friend and I, the one I'm talking about, like, we've only had one fight. Oh, it's like you don't function. It was the worst. The worst. We've been best friends for like 17 years.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, but it was like, oh God, that was over 10 years ago. We had that fight. But like, oh no, it was wild. Oh no, it was devastating. Yes. So yes, I found out not everybody has a best friend like that.
Wow.
So we are very lucky.
Sucks to suck. No, I'm playing. Yeah. I'm just kidding. But no, my best friend is like going on 12 years. And it's like, it is probably the most significant relationship outside of my partnership.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just
that's why her husband is so important to me.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 tips that you feel like you've learned in your life that have helped you in your current relationship that other people could take from your experience?
Be always in a position of listening. Always listen to your partner. Always give space to listen and to hear. Don't raise your voice. And don't escalate.
Don't escalate.
Don't escalate. Which we learn sometimes from our families. I mean, sorry, but we do sometimes. Don't escalate stuff, you know? My partner and I made a decision like early on not to ever raise our voice.
Fire.
Yeah, we decided like first weekend because we were best friends for a long time. Classic gays. We were best friends for a long time before we like became in a relationship.
I love the best friends to dating to back to best friends. It's always on a trajectory of one or the other.
I know. This is like classic. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of queer people on here that will say the same thing. It's like so unoriginal. It's nauseating. But yeah, like, you know, we made a decision like we'll never raise our voice to each other, and we have stuck to that. So just don't raise your voice. And then also don't like lose your identity in the process. We're very independent people. Like we just, you know, and I think I made the mistake of losing my identity in relationships before. Yeah. So being consistent to yourself.
Holding yourself accountable.
Yes. to yourself.
To yourself.
Not just the other person.
Yeah.
Not like, I got to be better. I got to go to therapy. What can I do to be better for this person? But more like, what do I got to do for me? Like, what's going on? How can I show up for my family, my friends, my career, myself, like my rest, like whatever I need, as well as the partner.
I always go back to as I get older, I just value every hour of the day that I can tend to like myself, my loved one, my family, my dog. It's like, those are precious hours that as you get older, you don't get back. It goes to someone else. Yeah. And it could be a good thing it goes to someone else. It could be the caring, the fact that you choose to be in a relationship with another human being. But it is a sacrifice. And so how do you get back to yourself, and what hours are for yourself? Yeah. Yeah. So when you're single, the good news about a breakup is 24 hours in a day can be about you.
Yeah, and use
extensions
time.
Of you. Yeah.
Or don't use that time. Like, don't use that time. Don't feel like you have to be productive in that time.
Oh, but that's still time you're using, which is great.
But
it's just don't. Yeah, it's all your time.
Sleep the whole time. Don't sleep, but just don't be like pressed about it. There's a lot of pressure to be productive.
Just sit.
Break up,
just
so
sit.
don't do that. Yeah.
It's 24 hours a day is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any words of wisdom in addition to the tips that you would want to? I know your fans are very engaged, and I could see why, because you're so full of life and you have such a fun just medium of art that I'm excited to see what your future brings. It'll be fun. I think you probably have some fun museums and collaborations and exhibits. It's what are your parting words with anyone going through a breakup?
Be delusional. I feel like that's such a TikTok thing to say, but I'm so
like,
serious.
Be delusional.
No, but be delusional. Yeah. First of all, like, my partner hates when I say this, but I will say it, like, because it's such a quote. But like, take like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take type of thing. You really do. So like, whether it's like whatever opportunities you're interested in, just go for it. Be completely delusional. Whether it's you want to start dating again, just like shoot your shot with the hottest, most like unattainable person if you think that they're unattainable to you, which they won't be. Like, just shoot your shot, or do whatever you want. Like, do literally like apply for the job you think you like are totally unqualified for. That's what most of the world's doing. I didn't realize that. So just
yes, they are.
shoot the shot.
Shoot your shot.
Be totally delusional.
It's a great quote.
Yeah,
it's a good one to end on. Shoot your shot. Be delusional.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Vita.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget to like and subscribe and sign on to our Patreon, guys. We'll see you next episode. UnCoupling Podcast is produced by Stampede Ventures, Jason R. Ellis, and Holland Roden.